As the sun slides toward the horizon on September 8th, Wiglaf and his trusty dog Griff trudge through the melting snow with the sound of dripping water coming off of the branches of trees as things begin to warm up and reach into the early spring of the Ironlands. It is evening, nearing 6 o'clock, and the sun has set into an early twilight. It is becoming the time of year when it never gets full dark here in the Antarctic Ironlands, and Wiglaf is tired and bruised, and his ankle is bothering him as he trudges over the last rise to reach Red Hall and his home and cabin. It has been a long attempt and an unsuccessful one at breaching Kajir's abyss and finding out what's going on with the death cult. And nagging in the back of his head, Wiglaf wants to know what the story is with his uncle Macius, his father's brother. How come Macius's name appeared on the list of people working for the death cult of Angus? Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is Ironsworn, Antarctica. We are with Wiglaf, our main character, who currently has 2 momentum, 4 health, 4 spirit, and only 2 supply because he's spent quite a bit of time in the wilderness struggling to get back after going to Kajir's Abyss. As you may have seen on the map, I have updated it with Kajir's Abyss, and we named the hills the Cliffs of Scarred Silence. And I randomly generated a name for this area here. It's the Unknown Plains. Um, so I guess Wiglaf doesn't know what's out there because they are the unknown plains. So we're slowly filling in this part of our map, although the rest of it is basically blank, except for the names of the regions. And in the last session, we decided to retreat from the delve. I attempted to go back and find the thrall that I had tied up. Wiglaf tried to do that, but when he got in there, he found that the boat had already been brought to the other side of the river, and there were 3 cultists who were ready to chase him down. We then started a scene challenge in which I made 2 mistakes, which I'll talk about. But we ran from these guys, and we slid down the sinkhole and out onto the ledge that we'd been in at the end of the previous session. And we tried to climb our way down, and they tried to throw the stones down on us and send some magical ravens after us. And through a series of steps of the scene challenge, we managed to get away, and the zealots eventually just decided not to pursue us. I made 2 mistakes after securing advantage. I've screwed up a couple of times with secure advantage. The old way is you either get +1 on the next move or +2 momentum, but the new way that we're using, which I believe comes from Starforge, the house-ruled way, is to take both, and you take one of them on a weak hit. And so I've been taking one on a weak hit or a strong hit, so I messed that up. But the next roll was already a strong hit anyway, so taking +1 to the next roll would not have mattered. So fortunately, that wasn't an issue. Then later, when we faced danger, I used burn momentum to get a strong hit, and then for some reason, like a minute later, I called it a weak hit, and I added a countdown box. So if we look at our scene challenge, really, this countdown box shouldn't be here, and it should have ended with 2 progress instead of 3, which is sort of the opposite of the last countdown track, where I think I only had 2 countdown at the end, but I should have had 3. So yeah, I'm still new to scene challenges, and occasionally I forget to do the bookkeeping. So I do apologize for that. So Wiglaf then faced some danger, and he got home to Red Hall with less supply and with a little bit of bruising, and he has arrived at Red Hall. Now, I want to ask a couple of questions of the Oracle. I want to know first, has Sabine and his family, are they still here in Red Hall, or have they managed to go back to Longhaven? And I'm going to say, I don't know, 50-50. So are they still in Red Hall? 90? Yes, very much so. So they're still in Red Hall. They're afraid to go back to Longhaven. So Wiglaf arrives, kind of beat up, He throws open the doors, and Sabine is in there with his family, and Sabine's wife and Nan's wife, Owena, are cooking dinner. And Nan and Sabine are sitting at a table, I don't know, playing dice or something, and or maybe playing cards. And Wiglaf stumbles in, and he's all sort of beaten up and tired, and Owena immediately says, "Wiglaf, what happened?" And Griff starts barking, and he goes licking Nan and Owena. And she says, "Wiglaf, oh my gosh, what happened to you? Come on in." And Wiglaf limps in using his spear to just sort of like prop himself up. And he sits down and he says, "We have a problem. And I'm going to need to talk to you guys about what I've learned." And so I guess at this point we're going to do a sojourn. We know that per night he can recover a supply or a spirit or whatever. But I think he's going to say, can you give me some supplies here, guys? I'm low on supply. We're rolling plus heart, and we have +1, so we're rolling +5. So hopefully we'll get some here. Let's see. Roll a 2 plus 5 is 7. Against a 9 and a 2, that's a weak hit. We can choose 1. So he's gonna say, "Look, I'm out of supply," and Owen is just gonna start throwing bread and cheese and salted pork and other supplies at him. And he picks up some new rope, and Sabine gives him a knife because Wiglaf lost his dagger or whatever, and he gets his supplies back, and so now his supplies are up to +4. Um, and So then Wiglaf launches into the tale, and um, he says, I found some things out, but it was a real struggle. And he describes that how he went into the cave, he was ambushed by cultists, he managed to kill them, but then when he went through their secret door, he got chased out by another cultist and lost the fight to that guy who slammed the door on him. So now he thinks that they're watching that entrance. He got into the secret entrance, but now all these rocks have been strewn down onto it. He doesn't know if he can get back in that way. He talks about finding this thrall, and that there's this guy named, what's his name, Valeri, who is the Husk. And he asks, have you guys ever heard that name before? And I'm going to say it's a small chance. And we get a 32, so they have not heard the name before. He then mentions, he says, I learned something very disturbing, and that is that somehow or other my uncle, my father's brother Macias, is involved with this cult. And this, of course, surprises Nan and Owena, who know him vaguely. And so they talk about this, and Owena brings food, and they have some dinner, and they're conversing about everything that Wiglaf has been through, and Griff's getting scraps from the table and enjoying very much gnawing on a pork bone or something. And Wiglaf says, "Well, I think I know what I have to do." And he looks at Nan, and Nan looks at him, and he says, "You're going to have to go back and talk to your parents, aren't you?" And Wiglaf says, "Yes, I think I have no choice. I'm going to set out tomorrow and see if I can um, find out if they know anything about what happened with Macias and why he joined this death cult. But I know they're not going to want to see me, so we'll have to see what happens. I'm not looking forward to it." And so at this point, Wiglaf, who's in fairly good shape, we're at +4 and everything instead of +5. Wiglaf is going to spend the evening with them, and then he says, "Come on, Griff," and they head back to where is the? Here we go. Red Hall. You got the map right here, right there in the hunting lodge. They're going to head up to Wiglaf's cabin. It's only a few hundred feet up the dirt path, which you can now see through the melting snow. And the snow is sort of refreezing when it gets dark a little bit, but it won't be doing that for very long. Oh, by the way, I forgot it's near the village of. We should have this. There we go, Longhaven. And he's going to go back to his cabin and spend the night. So now we don't have to do sojourn. We can't do another sojourn and everything, but we do know a character can recover a small amount. You can recover +1 supply or health or spirit per night, fully spent resting in a friendly settlement, which this is. And so I'm going to add one to these things. And I think I'm going to add one supply. I think it makes sense that his ankle is still bothering him, and I think it's going to take a little while to heal, but it makes sense that Wiglaf would go back to his cabin, and there he would take down some torches that he's got and some more flint and steel for his tinderbox, and he would, pull down some other stuff that he might need, like extra rope and whatever other supplies. So he rummages around, gets some other supplies, some extra food for Griff, and so on. And then Griff goes to sleep at his foot of his bed, and Wiglaf goes to bed for the night. The next morning, which is the next day, September 9th, it, Wiglaf gets up. It's already twilight. So if we look at the light regime here, let's zoom in. We can see that in this part of September, which is about a quarter way through September, it's going to get light by 9 a.m., but even at 6 a.m., it's like this out, right? Civil twilight. So it's already getting sort of early morning lightness, even as early as about 7 a.m. And it's going to stay that bright until about 8 or 9 p.m., close to 10 p.m. 8 p.m., 9 p.m. What is it? 18 is 6, 20 is 8, yeah, 21. So 9 p.m., 8, 9 p.m. So he's getting something similar to what we would get in an actual spring, like April in the northern hemisphere, in like kind of temperate part of the world where many of us probably live, or certainly where I live. So he gets a good night's sleep. It never really gets that dark. It always stays a little bit light. And he wakes up the next morning, and he marches down to Red Hall and has some breakfast early before the sun rises with Nan and Owena and Sabine. And then he's going to head to town and go to Longhaven. And this takes the better part of the day because it's some 20 miles away. So it takes him the whole day, and he's trudging along on his wounded ankle. And he's going to arrive in Longhaven again as the sun is starting to set, and we're starting to get into that brighter twilight, the civil twilight. And again, the snow is starting to melt a little bit, and it's starting to warm up, and it's getting into what Fahrenheit. We start talking about like upper 30s, low 40s. It's eventually going to get much warmer than that. It'll here it never is going to get into the hundreds, but it will get into maybe the low 70s, in the warmer parts of the summer. So things are starting to, thaw out, and he gets to Longhaven, and so he's going to be looking for his parents, and I guess one of the questions I have to ask, because it's been a number of days now, if we look at our session notes, he left Longhaven quite a while back, right? He left Longhaven on September 1st or 2nd, September 2nd. It's now the 9th or something. And right, because it was the 8th when we started. So it's now the 9th. It's been a week. And so one of the questions is, have the raiders of Kova attacked Longhaven again? And I don't know. I'm going to say 50-50. So have they attacked Longhaven again? We roll a 96. Yep, that's a 96. And so, yes, they have. And so let's think about there is a way to... Oh, there's an oracle for what the threat is doing. And this is a ravaging horde, right? So what did they do? 79. Undermine an opposing force from within us. So they did it again, right? So they've already done that. I feel like that's kind of lame. Let's try flipping it. 97 is employ a new weapon. What weapon? Let's look at action and theme. 23, manipulate. 58, language. Manipulate language. To manipulate language. All right, so I'm going to pause it here and let me see if I can figure out what that means. All right, so I've got it. So, Kova used some of the powers of the cultists. And what the cultists did while Wiglaf was away, and I guess they did this remotely. I don't think they were in the town. They did something to cause. Remember, they were trying to undermine the leader of the town, right? Whose name over here is Leo. I think what these guys did was they did some like remote curse. You know how when you get like the little doll that you put the pins in? Well, they did something. They created a doll, and they used the doll to rip out the tongue of the doll, and this has caused Leo of Longhaven to go mute. He cannot speak to anyone. He's like he's or maybe he's not mute, but like he just he can't talk at all, and he's like very confused. You know, kind of like someone in a stroke. You ask him a question, Leo, are you all right? He can't make himself understood, and so he's just sort of like in his house under the care of the chirurgeon, and nobody knows what's wrong, but he is now like completely out of it, and somebody else is probably going to be temporarily running the town. We may find that out. But in any case, Leo's not able to speak or do fulfill any of his roles, and it's because he's under like a some sort of a voodoo curse type thing from one of Angus's zealots, or maybe the Husk himself has done this and cursed Leo so that he can't talk. And so now the magistrate of the town is unable to do anything. He can't lead. But Wiglaf isn't going to know this yet. Wiglaf walks into town. Obviously, he senses some tension. He doesn't know exactly what's going on, and he's not actually going to directly look for Mila first. The first thing he wants to do is go to his family and talk to them about his uncle, right? But before he does that, he's going to have to get them to let him in. So before we do this, I'm going to pause here and generate the name of Wiglaf's parents, and then I'll bring you back. All right, so I have figured this out. I haven't come up with the father's name because the father is dead, according to the oracle. The mother's name is Taylor, and Wiglaf's an only child, according to the oracle. So Macias, his father's older brother, is obviously his mother's brother-in-law. I made up Taylor, and she's a mystic, so I decided she's Longhaven's wise woman. Okay. And her goal is to find a person. I have a suspicion about who that might be. Her disposition is demanding. She's confident and bitter. She's suffering, I think, the loss of her husband. Her location is Longhaven, and she's the mother to Wiglaf. And the father's reason for being dead is he challenged direction. I have a pretty good idea of what that means and how this is all going to work together. But first, we need to actually roleplay with her. And let's figure out how it goes. So, Wiglaf walks down the streets in the gathering twilight, and he approaches the house he grew up in. It's a small wooden frame house with a thatched roof, and it's sort of an A-frame. And Griff kind of barks because he recognizes this place. And there's some logs out back, and there's a shed and a barn, and they've got a mule in the back. And Wiglaf goes up to the front door. And I don't think Wiglaf, by the way, knows that his father has died, because he's not been in touch with his family all winter. And Wiglaf goes up to the door and he knocks on the door. At first there's no answer, and he says, "Mother, come on, open up. Mother, father, open up the door. Finally, the door creaks open, and his mother, who's been in the middle of like cooking dinner for herself, she peeks out. She says, "What are you doing here? We told you never to come back. You're a murderer." And Wiglaf says, "Mother, I'm not a murderer. Surely you must have talked to Mila in the week since I did things here in town to help the town. Surely you must know by now that I rescued a bunch of people from Highmount, that I saved them from the raiders of Duskmoor, that I saved Sabine and his family. Haven't you learned yet? I'm your son. You know I'm not a murderer." And let's see if he can attempt to persuade her to let him in. And Griff barks and tries to like sniff her and lick her hand. And let's roll plus heart and see how we do. 6 plus 4 is 10 against an 8 and a 6. Strong hit. We take plus 1 momentum. And so his mother sees so much of his father, who is now deceased, in him. And the tears start to fill her eyes, and she throws the door wide, and she finally puts her arms around Wiglaf and hugs him and says, "Oh, Wiglaf, Wiglaf, I have missed you. I have missed you, especially since what happened to your father." And Wiglaf stiffens, and he says, "What? What happened to father?" And she says, "Come in, come in. Sit down, and I'll tell you." And she sits him down at the table, and Griff kind of goes under the table like dogs do and sits down there, and she puts a couple of soup bones down for him to gnaw on, and she's making like a stew, and she ladles it into the bowl for her and one for him, for Wiglaf, and they sit down with their wooden spoons and they start. And Wiglaf says, "Where is father? What has happened?" And his mother says, "Wiglaf, your father is dead." And Wiglaf says, "He's dead? But why? What happened to him? How can this be?" And she says, "He was killed in the circle. He drew the circle, and he lost the duel." So his father challenged direction, right? So she says he was killed dueling in the circle. And Wiglaf says, "Well, you've got to tell me more about this. What happened? How did father die?" And she says, "He was killed by your uncle, Macias. Macias was going off to join Kova's forces, and he was going on and on and on about some god and a coming cataclysm that's going to make the one that happened before, when our people fled the old world, look pale in comparison. And your father said, you can't do this." And they argued, and finally your father pulled out a knife and said, "Let's draw the circle." And you know Macias is a trained fighter. He killed your father. And Wiglaf is stunned by this. He stops eating, and he says, "Well, I found this information already, that Uncle Macias joined some sort of a cult, and I've actually been clashing with this cult. They're the people who are behind Kova. What can you tell me about this? How did Macias learn about this? What in the world compelled him to do this?" And we're going to gather information, right? So he starts asking questions. When did this happen? Did it happen in the middle of winter? Did he have contact with what's her name? Who's the Tamir, the person that is now in prison? What's the story? So he starts questioning her and asking a whole bunch of questions. And we don't have a bond here, so we're just rolling a plus wits. And we roll a 1 plus 3. Sorry, plus 2 is 3 against a 6 and a 7, so that's a miss. So it unearths a dire threat or reveals an unwelcome truth. And I think I know what this truth is. Macias told us not even to call him Macias anymore. He told us to call him Valeri, and Wiglaf shudders and pays the price. And I think this is going to be... Well, I mean, I think this is paying the price, right? A surprising development complicates your quest. So as he's talking to his mother, and he hears that Macias has thrown off his old name as Macias and is calling himself Valeri, and is exhorting people to join this death cult, and that his father was like, no effing way, and they drew the circle and he killed him. Wiglaf is starting to realize Valeri, the husk that's leading the death cult and running everything, is in fact his uncle Macias. Right? This is the same thing. Not only was he a merc before coming a husk, he was Macias. And Wiglaf then pulls out the sheet of paper with the information on it that he had before, and he says, well, this explains this document with his name at the top of it. I thought he was an employee, but this seems to be almost like a hierarchy, and he's at the top, and now I see why his name is next to the name Valeri. I hadn't noticed that before. I hadn't looked at it since I heard the name. Well, where did you hear the name? She says, and he tells her the story of this thrall. And his mother says, well, something has to be done. They killed your father. And now with what's happened with Leo, and Wiglaf says, wait a minute, what happened with Leo? And his mother says, oh, didn't you hear? He hasn't been able to speak for days. What do you mean he can't speak? And then she explains, well, it seems like his tongue is almost like glued to the top of his mouth, and whenever he tries to talk, he can't make himself understood. We feel like some sort of an evil curse has been visited upon him. And Wiglaf says, okay, this has to be these guys. It has to be the cultists. I'm gonna have to do something about this. And his mother said, well, you're not going to do anything about it now. Why don't you stay here and get some sleep? And Wiglaf says to his mother, he takes out his knife and puts it to the palm of his hand. His mother says, what are you going to do? And Wiglaf says, I'm going to swear an iron vow that I will challenge Macias, or Valeri, or whatever he calls himself, to a duel and avenge my father. So Wiglaf is going to vow to avenge his father's death, right? So we're going to call this vow vengeance. Can I spell? Vengeance. Avenge his father's death. And I'm going to call this a dangerous vow. I mean, I know our enemy, Valeri, is going to be formidable, but I'm going to call this a dangerous vow because I don't think there should be that many steps to doing this. To avenge his father's death and kill the husk Valeri / Macias. And so we're going to just put this over here. I haven't been recording the milestones here. I should really do that. All right, so we've got another iron vow. We're going to mark that one as dangerous. So now what I'm going to do here, guys, as we finish vows, I'm going to start deleting them. So we're down at the bottom of the page. So what I'm going to do is eventually I'll delete the inciting incident stuff, and then we'll put our next vow up there. So he wants vengeance again. He swears vengeance against Macias for the death of his father. And so now we're going to swear an iron vow to his mother. So we're rolling +1. We do not have a plus heart. We don't have a bond with her. But I think if we avenge his father, maybe we'll have a chance at that. So we roll a 5. +4 is a 9. Oh my gosh! Against double 10s, it is a miss. So we face a significant obstacle. And then we can either give up or lose momentum. I guess we're going to take -2 momentum and go back down to 1 momentum. So there's a significant obstacle. Now his mother's a wise woman, so there's something that she might know. Let's do action and theme and say why she's going to say to him, this is not going to be so easy. And I think this is going to upgrade this to a formidable quest. So, whoops, I rolled the wrong dice. My D100s here. 60 is oppose and theme. 36, oppose world. Oppose world. Well, I mean, we know he's going to try to destroy the world. So I'm not sure that that helps me. Let's try rolling on the major plot twist table and see if that brings me any ideas. 72. A new danger appears. A new danger appears. So there's something more dangerous about Mossius / Valeri. What would it be? What would it be? All right, so let me think about this for a second, guys, and I'll be back when I figure it out. Okay, I've got it. Husks can consume the essence of others. When Mossius killed Wiglaf's father, he consumed his essence. And so his mother says, if you just kill Mossius, Valeri now, you just kill him, it will kill his body, but it will also destroy your father's soul. He will never rest in peace. Remember, she's a wise woman, so she knows these things. She says, before you kill him, you're going to need to free your father's soul from the husk's consumption, to release it. And Wiglaf says, how in the world can I do that? And she says, you're going to need what? He's going to need something. Should we look at feature, aspect, focus, action, and theme? I'm not sure. So he's going to need something, right? Some item that can release his father's essence and any other souls that this husk has consumed. So let's roll action and theme and see if it gives me any ideas. 85, construct. Is it maybe to make something? 52, passage. Construct passage. Construct passage. All right, so let me think about that, and I'll bring you back. So he's going to need to find like a passage, not like a physical passageway, but a passage like a section of text. He's going to have to find a ritual text that his mother knows exists somewhere, and he's going to have to get that and bring it to the husk. And after he kills the husk, before he kills the husk, he's going to have to read this out, and that will release all of the trapped souls and will potentially weaken the husk. So what I'm going to rule here is, and there may be a way to create a magic item, and I'll do this off screen. I'll figure this out off screen, but there are ways to create magic items. What I'm going to rule here is that the husk is actually an extreme power enemy, right? That it's not formidable. This particular husk is so powerful that he's extreme, which would make it much harder to defeat. But if Wiglaf can read the scroll in the presence of this husk before he starts fighting him, it will weaken him down to formidable. And then he can have sort of a normal battle against it, right? And so we have to figure out like the name of this thing, and we also have to figure out the like where it is. So I'm going to figure out like the composition of the magical scroll and how it'll work um, in when I'm off screen. But what we'll do is figure out what kind of a site that we're going to be uh, in. So it is going to be, we're going to do another delve. It is going to be a 0-1 in ancient, and then domain 15 cavern. We've done a cavern already. Let's flip it to 51, an ancient ruin. Okay, so he's going to come upon an ancient ruin, and its name is going to be in the format of 46. So place of detail. So in the ruins, it is going to be in the 79 spire of 34, the spire of iron. Okay, and he has to go to the spire of iron. I love this. This is going to have to be something to do with iron pillars. He's got to go to the spire of iron and figure out and get this scroll. Maybe it's written on the spire itself, like, you know, the way Egyptian hieroglyphs are painted on the walls of tombs. It's painted on the wall, so he's going to have to go and copy it down, and then he's going to, or maybe while he's there, do the incantation, and that will break the power of the husk and reduce him to the plain old formidable difficulty. So he's going to have to go to the delve. Now the question is, where is it? And there is a distance chart from Scarlet Heroes. You roll a d8 to see how far a thing is. And so let's just roll and see what we get. 5 is within a day's ride. I feel like that's too close. I don't think the Tower of Iron should be within a day's ride. Let's take a look at the map. I mean, I think it should be in the unknown plains somewhere. But I think it's going to be off, maybe on this lake. Maybe there's an island. See this little island here in the lake? I think the Iron Tower is on this lake. I like this idea. And Wiglaf is going to have to undertake a journey to go there. And he's going to have to read this off. That would break the power of the husk. And then he can come back and try to find the husk. My gosh, we have all these quests going and we haven't finished anything. Because we've scored misses, even though we're finding out information, I actually don't think it's fair to mark milestones here. So, well, let's see. Instead of deciding where it is, does Mother know where it is? Let's try to gather information, right? Or do I want to secure advantage? I think we're gathering information. So he says, all right, do you know where this thing is? And we roll a 4, plus 2 is 6, against a 6 and a 2. That is a weak hit. So she says, yes, I know where it is. And she tells him where it is. And the information complicates the quest. Well, it's on an island in the middle of this lake. And there are monsters in the lake. So you're going to have to find a way to get around the monsters or avoid them in order to get to the tower. And so that's going to be one of Wiglaf's tasks. Now, we don't necessarily have to do this immediately, but I feel like we need to now do this, right? God, I can't finish any of these quests, but I feel like we need to now do this because before we go into, Kajir's thing and try to deal with the death cult, we're going to have to weaken him. Otherwise, if we get in there, we're going to be fighting an extreme foe and we're going to get our butts kicked. So we got a weak hit. We got the information we wanted. And we take +1 momentum. So we get our momentum back to our reset value of 2, which isn't great. And now we have an idea of what we have to do. We have to go find the information, the incantation, the ritual that will allow us to um, weaken the power of the husk. And then we're going to have to probably go back to the previous delve and get in there and fight the husk. And maybe that'll get rid of the Death Worshippers and take vengeance on our father's killer all at the same time. And then if we do that, I think we're also advancing what's happening with Kova. And we also have this problem of the mayor, the magistrate, and him being cursed as well. I don't think we want to make another vow about that. So that's just sort of in the background. I think if we manage to kill the husk, this will probably cure the Leo problem as well. Not really sure. So, okay, a lot of confusing stuff happened here, and a bunch of misses. By the way, I do want to point out we're getting kind of close to experience here. I think that we may have had enough misses on this um, evening to fill up the 7 box. If we have, then at the beginning of next session, I'm going to roll for experience and see if we can try to get some XP. Although, man, rolling double 10s and stuff, that is not great. So, well, it upgraded the husk to an extreme, and it also made it much more complicated. We can't kill the husk until we free our father's spirit from it. So that's going to make things much more complicated. But I think we got the story developing, so definitely going in places I didn't expect it to go. I hope you guys have enjoyed. I certainly have. And until next time, I am Scrapperlock, and this has been Ironsworn, Antarctica.